All right. Welcome back with another episode of Paladin Financial Talk. I'm your host, Nikki Foley, and I am joined by our co-host, the magnificent Tony Shore from home today.
Yeah, yep, yeah. I'm working on the home front in my home studio here today, and glad I could be here with you. Sorry I couldn't make it in today, but I have a pretty nice home studio set up as well. Not quite as nice as the studio there, where you guys are at, where we normally record. But I'm excited to be on the show. I appreciate you having me on once again, Nikki.
Absolutely. We love to have you. And this week we have a tremendously talented guest with us. And she's going to lend her expertise just kind of as an extension of our focus on women and the intersection of finance and empowerment. But we're going to kind of start breaking away from that as the month wraps up. Today, we're really going to look at her experience in the financial sector and specifically in the realm of employee benefits or employer benefits. And so she has tremendous experience, like I said, in the industry. She's been doing this for almost 20 years, maybe even a little over 20 years at this point. She currently serves as a senior vice president at a very large organization, publicly traded. They focus heavily on the wealth space, but also the health space and the investment side of things. She was at Wells Fargo for close to 15 years, started her career in the industry with Principal Financial. And so, as you can see, she is not lacking anything on knowledge here. And I love to be able to brag about people that I know. And so she has tons of accolades in the industry. She's won awards. She's done a number of podcasts in her days. This is not new to her. She gets quoted in trade publications along the way and media, and she regularly shares the stage with other thought leaders and experts. And so we're so lucky to have Allison Dirksen with us today.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Nikki and Tony. I'm totally blushing.
Well, she has a great background, and I have to tell a story. So Allison and I know each other now through school and kids sports. That's really where we've got to know each other. But before that, we were acquaintances, but really hadn't spent the time together at this point. And one of our mutual friends said to me in a conversation, we were just chatting. I think it was just talking about parents in general that we were friends with. And he said, Allison, that Allison is just a rock star. And this is not an individual that gives out warm compliments very often. And that saying that I remember exactly where I was sitting really stuck with me. And I think it's such an appropriate statement and a huge compliment to you, Allison. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much. And I actually have royalties that I pay to that individual just to keep the good mojo out there for me.
Well, Tony, with that, I think that we can just dive in today if you guys are good with this, and let's get rolling.
Well, yeah, I mean, Allison, what an impressive background you have. I think it's awesome. And congratulations on all the success, everything you've accomplished. I think we're going to learn rock star is an appropriate title here, Allison. And you have leadership in the employee benefits sector, which is really important. It's good to have an expert on the show. Allison, is there anything we missed that you want to let our listeners know or that they would enjoy knowing about you?
Well, I think it's appropriate, with my focus on corporate leadership responsibilities. One of the things I enjoy spending the most time doing is mentoring and sponsoring young individuals in their career, specifically those that are females and looking to kind of grow their career within the financial services industry. So spend a lot of time identifying who those individuals are and really dissecting and helping individuals find right mentorship, but understanding the importance of sponsorship as well, which is putting people forward for projects and initiatives that they might not have had access to in the past. So that's something kind of that just doesn't run kind of the ticker symbol for yourself. But the other thing is outside of work, we're so much more than just that. And so I'm a wife, I'm a mother to two growing, active, beautiful, challenging boys.
Oh, how old?
They are 10 and 7. So Nikki and I get to spend a lot of time together on a soccer field or in, a soccer stadium here in the winter. And then I would just say my personal passions outside of work and the mentorship piece really stem to our school and our church community, where I've had the pleasure of sitting on numerous boards or ministry area councils.
Absolutely. So see, that is why it meant so much to me to have Allison here. So not only the professional accolades, but how she looks at the way that she approaches things and bringing people along with her, that is everything. And that's something that we have talked about for a couple episodes. And Marianne spoke last week as one of our experts on how important that is through her career as she's starting to wind down. And so thank you from all the people that don't say it to you for being that person and looking at life from that perspective, and for the volunteer hours that you do, and just putting yourself already busy and already running a crazy life, but taking that extra time to volunteer and do the things that you do in our community. So,
Thank you.
well, with that, let's kick off here. And so when Allison and I set this up, I just said, hey, do you want to be on? And we didn't really talk about where we were going to go with this. But last week we had a guest, Marianne Montaigne. She's been in the industry forever. She comes from the CFA side of things and the being an analyst and a portfolio manager and so forth. And she said something just talking in one of her stories of, controlling what you can control. And I think that's such an important piece as you just approach life. But it actually lent a little bit to how I was thinking about employer benefits. One of the things that we run into at Paladin as we're talking with our clients or prospective clients, and I come from an HR background, so this is not how I look at things, but so many people get confused with the benefits that they get offered from their organizations, from their employer. And then when I really see it pop up is when they're transitioning into retirement and they have to figure out how to fill these gaps and do it on their own. So I thought it would be a really nice topic to talk about today is one, employer benefits, but two, just getting your hands around what you can control. You're already sitting on all these benefits that somebody is offering you, the employer is offering you. So let's figure out how to maximize them and know if we can lend just a few tips and tools along the way to how to take advantage of things. Yep. And so control what you control is how it got me here, but it just ended up kind of falling in line with having Allison as our guest. And so today, again, the concept of is workplace benefits and retirement savings, and that's Allison's area of expertise. And so with that, let's keep going. Anything, Tony, that you want to add before we get into asking Allison some questions?
Well, yeah, I mean, the topic today applies to a broad range of listeners out there and our viewers. I think whether you're new to the workforce or nearing retirement and everybody in between, this is not about women or men, really. We're talking about everyone today when it comes to these types of things, health insurance, HSAs, that type of thing, right?
You got it. Yeah, like I said at the beginning, this came up because I thought, what a great guest to have as part of Women's History Month. But the reality is what we're talking about and what Allison does every day, that is everybody. So starting to turn the corner and just speaking to everybody. And we'll add a little bit here at the end on women and mentorship and expand a little bit. But yeah, we are talking to everybody. And I think it applies to everybody, back to what I said before, is entering a career and understanding what your benefits are and how you maximize those. And as you exit as well, and everybody can take tips and apply back everywhere in between those phases. All right. So with that, typically we do just kind of a question and answer type format, but there's, I think, probably some good stories that we might have to go along with this as well. I think Allison shares some stories that she's probably seen in her role, and I know I certainly see them from the pre-retiree and retiree side of things, and so we'll add some of those as well. And so, Allison, let's just start by setting the stage of when we talk about workplace benefits and we talk about retirement savings, can you just give our listeners, what are we actually talking about and what falls within that scope?
Well, I think people often look at workplace benefits as just being siloed between my health decisions and retirement. And they think of the health insurance that they enroll in on an annual basis and either a 401k or a 403b, depending on what type of employer that you're working for. But it's so much more than that. In fact, it's like if you look at workplace benefits, they've really exploded in different product offerings over the years. Now we've got our health savings accounts. We've got emergency savings accounts that employers can actually contribute to. We've got student debt refinancing programs, pet insurance that's being added. So workplace benefits are important. But what's interesting, if we rewind about 4 years ago, we had this thing called a pandemic. And through COVID, what we saw is that there was this great recession of people leaving the workplace. And for employers to attract and retain their employee base, what they did is they decided, you know what, I'm going to throw every single benefit I can at the kitchen sink to see what sticks. And so what happens is then you have this kind of flexibility that's been offered to employees from a benefits perspective to get them come back to work. But then layer on what we're feeling from a financial perspective, inflation, which is really, really high with the increase of cost of living. People are paying more for their groceries, their gas, their housing, their everyday essentials. And now they're really making decisions on, where do I spend my money? And now do I even have enough to save for retirement? And there was a really great study that's done by Willis Towers Watson last year. It was a global benefits study that talked about health and retirement benefits, that they have risen in significance of why employees choose to stay at their particular employer. So it's a huge focus, ton of significance that's been put on those kind of two health and wealth benefits decisions. But I think the bigger thing that we kind of have to unravel here is that while flexibility and choice have been added for employees, it's actually created complexity and decision fatigue. And so now people, kind of to your point, it's like, maybe I made elections at one point, but now I don't know what to do anymore. So it's really, really interesting. If I could give you a little bit perspective, the average benefit package that an employee has is about 40 benefit elections that they need to make on that annual enrollment cycle. The average employee spends 13 minutes.
Yeah.
Click, 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 get me through my open enrollment, right? So then that same employee, you go home at night, you're tired, you put your feet up, you turn on Netflix. I'm not sure what I'm going to watch. An average American spends 43 minutes just figuring out what they want to watch. So the clearly our priorities are misaligned, which makes this whole workplace retirement kind of conversation so important right now.
Absolutely. I had read something that was similar in time frame, so 13 minutes or 11 minutes. I'm like, really, it's incredible that that's your health decisions. Those are your retirement decisions. And I think if you were to take a step back, I mean, that's what everybody is concerned about when you hear about their worries and their fears. Yet that's the amount of time that ends up happening. And do you have, and if I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, do you have statistics or experience in the why that happens and it's such a small amount of time?
I think because they don't understand
Yeah.
the decisions that they're making. So it's more painful. They don't have a trusted source. They need individual, like hyper personalized guidance
Yeah.
to be able to guide them through that conversation, a trusted financial partner. And instead, it's more of the necessary evil. I hope my choices are right, but no one really understands the impact of today's health decisions have a major impact on future wealth decisions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make two comments here. First one being about what we see once they're coming out of the workforce, and then also maybe a little bit from the HR perspective. I think the HR response in some cases is to build hype and excitement and giveaways and like this party celebration atmosphere. But what you just said really resonates with me is they want that individualized attention because they need somebody that has expertise to help them guide them through the steps. And so really good points there. From kind of the storytelling side of things, we in a series of maybe a week had 3 individuals that were either retiring or had something happen where they had downsized, the employer had downsized, and they were in need of, what do I do now? And like, panic was what was surrounding them, and everybody responds differently to stress and of that nature, but very high intensity from every one of those conversations, and all they wanted was somebody to tell them what to do, both from a retirement, what to do with their plan dollars and what to do from a medical perspective. One individual, I said intensity, but he was paralyzed. He could not make a decision, and he was on the final. He had like days until his deadlines were up of making decisions for everything and hadn't even started, but it was in a very intense reaction from that perspective. And so it's real that people don't know how to take a step forward sometimes, and they just lack the information. So those were some good stories to go along with that, and statistics that you shared to illustrate what we're talking about today. So help help our listeners just understand how these two intersect a little bit, and how having them set you up for a secure financial future and hopefully enjoy a happy and healthy retirement.
Yeah, I mean, it's no fault of anyone's that these benefit decisions have been siloed and I think kind of independent, but we need to start thinking them of interconnected between the health and wealth. You've already talked about how individuals were making decisions on the health side. I've already said, open enrollment tends to happen one time of year for most employees working for a corporation. And you enroll in those benefits every year. And your retirement enrollment tends to be, I get hired, I get auto enrolled into something, and off it goes on some course until I decide to re engage with it. So, because those decision points tend not to be connected, people aren't seeing that pulled together. But, how are those I think how those two decisions can be intertwined. Think about, for starters, the number one reason for hardships out of a retirement plan is unforeseen medical expenses. And employees need help kind of navigating those complex, challenging employee decisions that it can focus more on their overall financial picture. Could a hardship be prevented if an employee understood that their health elections and how those connect maybe to an HSA that they enrolled in or an emergency savings fund that they might have? Possibly so, but until we're trained to think about those elections and how they intersect with the wealth,
Yeah.
it's hard to make that bridge. So we've got some work to do.
I love this topic, and that might make me one. I don't know, not probably the person that you want to socialize at a party, but it is. I mean, these conversations where people don't have the knowledge to get to the other side, and I see this even in our house. Jeff Foley is a highly educated individual, and I know if he put the time into understanding the health side of things, he would dive right in. But when you have another individual in your household that maybe gravitates more towards this, so right or wrong, sometimes stereotypical, the female is
Mhm.
focusing on the health side of things, where the male is focusing on the wealth side of things. There's even
It's a
that
very fair
splitting
point.
that happens in households, and you don't have that interconnection of how these work together if you have two people handling things. And so another element to throw into that.
Let
And
alone if both people are working at different organizations and now you're trying to compare plans across the union of your employer versus my employer, and then how that rolls into the
yeah.
overall wealth picture.
And right or wrong, what this happens is people have a deadline and
Mhm.
life is happening, and they get down to that final moment
Mhm.
where they have to make something and they just make a decision.
Right.
Let's just do what I did before because it worked for me. And
Thus your 13 minutes.
yeah, exactly. Very much so. So my background in HR again, and kind of the hands-on experience that I've had with Paladin as we see people. I feel like these are what we've been describing. It happens on the 401k decisions. It happens on their health plans. It happens on their supplemental plans that might go along that they have access to. And so as the world is moving so fast, guess what? Like, it's moving fast on legislation and things that might impact these buckets that they get to make decisions on. And so when they get into that mindset of kind of set it and forget it and not coming back to revisit and understand, they're missing out on, as you talked about, there's 40 plus offerings that they might have, and they're not taking advantage of those. So if you would just go through with us, how do you is there a solution to help people understand their offerings, and how can people help themselves? I think that's an important piece too.
Well, there's no solution for everybody, right? I mean, it's all individually based, but I really believe that employees and individuals are seeking a decision support tool that's hyper personalized to help them with these decisions. So it's less about personalized, and I'll talk about the difference. Personalized, more towards hyper personalized. So consumers of all ages, we're embracing and expect personalization from
Mm.
every brand experience that we have. Data, technology, they allow us to kind of move past that personalization. And we're all looking at like our digital assistants. I'm wearing a watch that's telling me, somebody's emailed, texted me, whatever. So we have our wearables, we have digital assistants, and we have interactive apps that are changing the way that we consume information. Back to my Netflix
Yeah.
example. We've all sat down, looked at your profile, and look at what is already at the top of the screen for you. Something that has, through an AI, past user experience, feeding you exactly what you want to watch next. And most often, it's not wrong. And so that same type of application needs to be applied to a benefits decision-making process. And when I talk about like an individual supports or an individual decision tool, think about an employee that is going through their open enrollment on health. If the system could be fed with all of their past benefit claims, maybe HSA disbursements that they had, and align them to each actually a guidance to say, this is the type of healthcare plan you should enroll in. And actually, you know what, per pay period, you're going to save, let's say, $50 because we're enrolling you in a high deductible healthcare plan. But take it further then to say, what do you do with that extra amount that's in your paycheck? Should it go to the HSA? Should it go to an emergency savings account based on other information that you've loaded into kind of a decision support tool? Or should it go into a 401k plan, right? So I think employees are literally looking for, what do you already know about me to help me with these decisions? And I really believe the employers, the financial professionals that can manage and master that are going to build such confidence with their employee base that you're going to be able to capture and maintain the next like cross-generational talent, because that's how consumers are looking to engage and interact.
Absolutely. And now I'm going to ping you with questions here. So hopefully I'm not going to put you too much on the spot. So how far along is the industry in truly providing something like that?
I think we're on the cusp. We're not there yet. Organizationally, I know we're personally working on things. I know competitors in terms of big retirement shops are doing it, healthcare shops are doing it. But what we're not seeing, where is that integration coming in to where you can provide both to the end consumer? So I think everybody now, anyone I talk to, whether it's on the individual advising side to an actual individual at the corporate level, retirement providers, everyone's talking about this convergence of health and wealth. So they know this is a problem, and it's who can get to market the quickest with the most effective tools.
Do you think that will be pushed down through large organizations and there'll be early adopters in it? And do you think that there are solutions that will get fed to small businesses and being able to support on the employer side from, 15 and under employees?
I think it will start larger. If you think about it, some of the bigger decisions that need to be made kind of predicate themselves on higher deductible healthcare plans, which you typically don't see in smaller employers, because so then that's your tie to the high deductible plan to an HSA. And I think that's where kind of more holistically the industry is looking at first, to have that HSA serve as the bridge between your health plans and your wealth plans coming together.
As AI continues to roll out, and it's such an important piece of, I think, where we're going and what we can do for individuals. It's scary for individuals, but I think about right now in the Medicare work that we're doing within our organization, the platforms I'm most attracted to are the ones that have the most integrated, intelligent technology to support them. And so it is human nature and common sense that you gravitate towards that side of things. And so knowing that this is available and this is kind of where people are going, it helps them. If you do not have interest in either side of it, the finance or the wealth side or the health side of things, it's interactive, and it'll keep you going, follow the bouncing ball almost with the information that's available. So it's fantastic. Very, very good. What about other trends as you are you're on the cusp of things? Your organization has to be a leader in this space. And so what else are you seeing that you think our listeners should know about?
Oh, what goes around comes around is what I think with trends. Think of our fashion, Nikki,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
the 90s, I think, are pretty in right now. So I might, the 80s were a thing a couple of years ago. I think the same thing with our industry. I think back, 20 years ago when automatic enrollment in retirement plans was this like taboo thing. You're going to force people to opt out of participating in the retirement plan. And we saw it worked. Then people added automatic deferral increase, just automatically increase people's savings rate one time a year. How dare we? And it worked. We are seeing as a trend those same philosophies being flirted with health savings accounts, to where we're just going to default people in if you have the access and you're enrolled in the right healthcare plan. And then over time, could we auto deferral increase those rates so that there's more of that cost saving and healthcare protection, which we know is incredibly expensive. I think the last stat I heard is over $350,000 that an individual needs for their healthcare in retirement. So that's where the HSA piece, again, serves as that bridge between the other two. The other one that is interesting as we talk with employers is about flexibility of spend. So employers tend to offset cost of major benefit offerings, right, to some extent for all those 40 options that they're applying to their employees. And some are kind of talking about, what if instead of doing that for the masses, we gifted the employees X amount of dollars for them to choose where they want to have the most offset of their pocketbook on a monthly, annual basis. So I think that's a really interesting thing. But my goodness, think about the education that would need to go along with that as a financial professional and supporting people with those conversations. If employers are doing all of that work right now to truly offer the best in class benefit package they can to their employees. And now if they're going to turn it over to empower their employees, that again, that individual education has got to be superior so that employees don't make a misstep.
Yeah, absolutely. My brain is going in so many different ways. So I hope I can remember what I want to say here. First thought you're seeing them starting to flirt with this of not only being able to have your employer contribute to your health and your retirement, but now also paying back some your college loans and some of that. So you start to see this already expanding. What has to happen from like a legislative perspective and corporate perspective and filings, like to actually see something like this go through? Is this like a 1-year span? Are we talking 3 years before we could actually start seeing something like that for employees?
Well, on the HSA side specifically, or
just having kind of that a la carte menu of you deciding where you want to get.
I don't think there's anything that needs to go through from a legislative perspective, but it's a major shift in how employers probably negotiate their rates with their benefits providers and then have that dollar, how they're going to manage that monetary spend from a corporate finance perspective. I just think it's more of early adopters that are out there, again, in that larger corporate space that are probably looking at this. And we'll see if that execution manifests itself.
Yeah, I'm asking some of these questions out of curiosity on some of it. So, what you're discussing and proposing, do you see them as employers taking away from what they might contribute to health or to like a 401k because somebody might choose as a younger individual, they want to put it towards their college loans as an example? Is that
Yeah,
what we're discussing?
I don't think they've had that much of a deep, in-depth conversation, right? Of what the impact is from what they're going to give. If you look at, it's the health piece is the largest spend from a benefits dollars for an employer. But if you look at all the benefits, including the retirement match too, what you're looking at here, I think, is more of the offset that on the healthcare side first, because it's the biggest spend. And it's also where the employees tend to focus most of their time. Again, that retirement tends to be that set it and forget it. So I think that's going to be more the focus.
Okay, makes sense. Going back to the healthcare side of things, I see as people come into the retirement phase of life that the HSAs have not built up. I think that's partially because of when they were introduced and potentially the size of the organizations that people that are retiring today maybe just didn't have a long enough time to take advantage of them. Or didn't have the knowledge to take advantage of them, or, I mean, I could keep saying a variety of ors here, or at that point, their health, they didn't want to take the risk of not, coming off of a traditional plan, variety of things there. Do you think that the industry has done enough to promote HSAs and the benefits of them, or do we still have opportunity there? And what's happening kind of from a perspective of the industry on HSAs and maximizing that?
Oh, I mean, I come back. Here's my correlation. When the 401k plan first rolled out, it was called a salary reduction plan. Like, who's signing up for that, And I think there's something along that we've done with HSAs as well. And there's for sure so much more we could do from an education perspective. The average balances are incredibly low. People are using them for their everyday health needs within the calendar year that they're deferring. So the balances grow and then they deplete. They grow and they deplete, but people aren't, unless you have that set it and forget it mentality, they're not continuing to compound and grow. And so to me, I think it's a very core fundamental education that needs to be done. And that starts both with the employer and whoever is providing that HSA service to that employer to help educate employees on the nature of that HSA. And if you're partnering with a financial advisor, hopefully they're helping with investment structure and what kind of some goals are towards that long-term retirement and how the HSA factors in to what that looks like.
Absolutely.
Yeah, as an employee, sorry to interrupt you, Nikki. I just want to jump in because as an employee, in the past, that was the thing I was most confused about or had the biggest problem with is understanding the HSA and why that was so important. I had a lot of people saying, this is great. I just did the numbers on what my family and my kids needed and thought, well, it means I'm putting away more of my money and using more of my own money rather than the insurance money, and then I'm still paying the premiums. But it wasn't properly explained. And my biggest gripe about benefits are HSAs. I don't think they're properly explained. And now that I've been doing the financial program, working with you and Jeff and hearing Allison, they need to do a better job of explaining just how great HSAs are, because they are, I believe, the only account in the IRS tax code where you put money in goes in tax-free and comes out tax-free, and you never have to pay taxes on it, and it grows tax-free, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Tony, you bring up some good points. And I think that even if somebody was to go out and just do a little bit of research on HSAs, I think there's still kind of a missing story that goes along with them in a couple different ways. Is the long-term story. It's always about the here and now and the present and the needs that go along with that most of the time. When you're making decisions about selecting an HSA, especially if you don't want to use your employers. I mean, that's an option. There's just a lot of things that you kind of don't know about HSAs still. This is, again, my opinion from kind of what we see as it relates to the everyday at Paladin, but also the investment side of things and knowing what your investment options are and that they can sit in different buckets. And so I feel like we could spend a whole month talking about HSAs and the benefits and like the different perspectives. What are we, you are in, you have your hands on this every day and the pulse of everything. What are we not thinking about from what Tony shared and what I shared? Is there anything about HSAs that you would recommend that people know, look at, resources, anything of that nature? And it makes me think, as a financial professional, we should be doing more. We talk about it, and it's a key part of our written plan, but maybe we don't even talk about it enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, again, I just can't stress the education piece of it. Tony even mentioned it. There's just such a misconception on what it's there for, the benefits of it. And even as an industry, we do have some evolution to do, because sometimes you're even put into a bucket of the investment elections that you can have within an HSA. They don't necessarily mirror the flexibility and the same lineup as you would have in a 401k. So that just overall education, I would say, can't talk about it enough.
And I think this goes back to, as Tony, one of the things you said, and I think young professionals oftentimes choose a high deductible plan and therefore an HSA, maybe not even an HSA sometimes, because of the cost. They're healthy individuals. They're making a financial decision when they decide that, and they have yet to cross over to that next piece of that is, how can I take advantage of the HSA and can I have enough clarity to say it's going to benefit me at a later point in life? And so
such a hard thing to do, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, think
when
of when your parents were telling you to enroll in your retirement plan on your very first job, and you're thinking, geez Louise, retirement seems so far away, but it's critical. And the next generation can really benefit from early savings.
And I'll call back to, I try not to plug Paladin all the way through this podcast, but going back to making a decision to work with a professional can have a lot of different meanings. And so that's one of the pieces as you choose to work with a professional, whether it's Paladin or elsewhere, like those are the conversations that you want to be having, and having almost a quarterback and somebody that's holding you accountable to some of your decisions to shine light on things that you might not be thinking about along the way. And oftentimes people don't choose to have a professional in their world because they think they can't afford it, or they think that it's not the right time because they're not ready to retire, or they don't have to make Medicare decisions. But you can choose to work with a financial professional. The earlier, the better is the way that I look at it. And there's so many different ways that you can have that partnership, whether it's a flat fee or something different. And so, gosh, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground today. What else are we not thinking about that you feel like goes along with what we've shared up to this point?
I think we've covered it, honestly, when it comes to the workplace benefits. I feel good.
Like I said, I'm one big dork over here that these are the kind of things that I love to talk about. Probably not the person that you want to take to a party with you, but I feel like I could just
You can be my date anytime.
keep picking Allison's brain all day long here. Tony will probably get bored and exit. Well, let's talk a little bit about the women's side of things. You did such a nice job introducing yourself and some of the ways that you look at how you approach your job, not just the expertise that you lent today, but how you look at bringing others along with you and the mentorship and the sponsorship. And I think that's important. We've talked about it, that women earn less than men. We're at 82 cents on the dollar, which just seems incredibly bizarre that we're sitting here having that conversation still. We're faced with the fact that sometimes you have to take time out of the workplace because of caregiving. And at the place we're at in our life right now, before we started the show, both Tony and Allison were talking about their parents and some of the medical side of things that you either are caring up or you're caring for your 9 and your 4-year-old or whatever it might be, and the high schoolers that are still in your house. And so caregiving is a really realistic thing, and it could reduce lifetime earnings. That could have an impact on the 401k, the retirement savings we've been talking about. It could have an impact on what your Social Security benefits look like. They tend to live longer. So there's all these things that go up against women. How do we continue to inspire change? What do you see in the industry that you're in the position that you hold for a major publicly traded organization? What are your recommendations and some thoughts that go along with these things?
Oh, this is so near and dear to my heart. I mean, I have the absolute privilege of serving as the executive sponsor for our organization's research of women in financial equity. So literally everything that you just mentioned is 100% spot on. So like, I don't have much to add from like the stats perspective. It's shocking and disappointing that that's where we're still at, but just so much opportunity still exists. And I will say, from some of the research that we've seen, one of the very first things is you have to acknowledge that the gap still exists for women and their savings rates compared to men. That's an excellent place to start. The other is that women benefit more than men from targeted education and marketing. We respond better to those efforts. We help. We're more likely to work with a financial advisor, and when we do, our confidence, I would say, is naturally increased, and we tend to do more with the advice that's given to us. So I do think that more, not only from that targeted guidance piece, but the more women can find and work with financial professionals to help them with their retirement planning is really going to kind of start to switch that narrative slowly but surely. I think the other thing that what we can do is just work to inspire confidence with and experience with finances at a very young age with young women. You know, the more women develop confidence and investing and decisions very early on in their life, it just naturally is going to bleed curiosity and comfort as they mature. So to me, that's really the best foundation from where we can continue to build diversity within our financial services professionals and get more and more women to join the advisor and professional services industry. To me, that's the win-win right there.
Women are also more likely to refer than men. And so taking somebody along with you. So as you've had experiences as a female and good experiences, whether it's with a professional or it's an education-laced, situation, like take somebody along with you and talk about it and help them find the road as well. Well, I am so grateful for the time that I had with you and we've had with you, and that you've been willing to share your time with our listeners and all the knowledge and the statistics that you have brought. So thank you very, very much. So some of the things that I think are important to just circle back on is workplace benefits. The average is 13 minutes, and taking some time to slow down and say, what if I knew more? and what would happen from both a health perspective and a wealth perspective. And be curious. Don't hesitate to pin your HR team down or engage a professional, and specifically looking for a financial professional that really does talk about not just the investment management
Mhm.
side of thing, but has a broader, more wealth management perspective, because the health piece just falls right in there. And so, keep your eyes out for everything that's happening from an AI perspective. While oftentimes that has both positive connotation and negative connotation, think about how it could be a personalized guide for you. And so, look for the things that could play into your, for our listeners, help them along the way and help them make decisions. I feel like there's so many other points that we could say. Anything, Allison, that you want to wrap up and just remind our listeners of what we talked about today?
We've talked about workplace. I've said health. I've said wealth. But I think the biggest thing listeners can remember, that health isn't just what we do with our bodies or put into our bodies. It's the healthy life includes a financial plan and the products that we utilize. So take the time, explore workplace benefit decision tools to support you and your decision-making process. And even better, seek out a professional advisor to help you. And remember that health benefits today impact your future wealth tomorrow.
Yeah, so fantastic. Tony, you've been listening and adding in anything that you've heard that we want to remind our listeners of, or observations you've had from today's show.
Well, I think just spend more time, more than 13 minutes, planning out your benefits and looking at your benefits package during open enrollment. And if you're not already working with a financial professional, give the Paladin team a call. Speaking of that, before we go, Nikki, let our listeners out there know how they can get a hold of you.
Absolutely. You can reach the Paladin Financial team at 651-842-8406. You can always visit our website at paladinfinancial.com. But if you like what you're hearing, continue to follow along, like us as you do it. So Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, we're constantly posting there. Look for us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and always YouTube. So thank you again for everybody that tuned in today. Allison, thank you. Tony, it's always great to see you and have you with us. All right, everybody, have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep. And that does it for today's episode of Paladin Financial Talk.